when I beat it. Me not even care, I be a fake or that real. I just wanna get that feel of that booty that you're treating. Oh, why you wanna play the hard to get? My fourth letter getting bigger in the alphabet. My dumb figure moving silly when you come correct. But she on fleek, check. Booty, check. Breath, check. Money, check. Later in the night, she a freak, check. Hey, man. Winning everything that I'm throwing. Got a Cuban for the neck, gold glowing. Really only want a bad team. Made me wanna do a mad ting. See me when I'm on my Don King, and I kill it with a milli, so I get another ring for the bang.
Oh na na, you don't wanna run with me. Oh la la, run up on man and squeeze. Easy peasy squeezy, talking bad until you see me.
Come on,
Make man, just like a genie.
See you waiting from the night. She does a little tweet and a little snap. Preen up her Insta, all I do is tap. I ain't into talking, but she make me chat. Man will do anything, just say they can have that. See me, I do it better. She flexing in my sweater. People I can't trust, I'm like the weather. Face Riri, got a body like she menna. Money on a B-day, I don't do no letter. Let her spend grand. Got one young G, only know bang. Uptown function, but I'm with gang. These broke youths gassing up gram. Made no paper, acting on cam. Love a real deal, not a lie. I said, let's have a dinner date in the bag. Girl, bust sit down, look up like July. Got girl at the table, meet KSI.
Oh na na, you don't wanna run with me. Oh la la, run up on man and squeeze. Easy peasy squeezy, talking bad until you see me. Make man, just like Houdini.
Then I pop up with a bang, squeeze it, throw them away.
Oh na na, you don't wanna run with me. Oh la la, run up on man and squeeze. Easy peasy squeezy, talking bad until you see me. Make man, just like a